Speaking of ain't nobody got time for that, the NCAA says there's no SEC bias. But you see a team like Alabama lose to an unranked Texas A&M, and they fall from 1 to 5. And then you see a team like Iowa, ranked number 2, lose to an unranked team, and they fall from 2 to 11. And you see Notre Dame lose to a top 10 team, which is actually now the number 2 ranked team in the nation, and they fall from 7 to 14. So, how is there no SEC bias? As soon as Alabama dropped to number 5, everybody saw the writing on the wall. Okay, cool. If Alabama doesn't lose another game, they're back in the playoffs because they're going to leapfrog somebody ahead of playoff time, right? That's just what happens in the NCAA. Stop pretending like you don't have an SEC bias. Stop pretending like you don't want Alabama in the playoffs. Stop pretending like you don't want this to just be an SEC tournament. This is the stuff that I just don't understand, Soup. Why don't they just come out and be like, look, the SEC is the best. We're going to put this up. We're going to just have an SEC playoffs, and the winner of the SEC playoffs is going to win the national title.
They kind of do, in the fact that they had to make a comment that there's no bias. If you're making a comment that there's no bias, there's bias.
100%. 100%. And here's what I really, truly boggles my mind. And people came at me. I posted this on my Facebook page earlier, and people were like, oh, how can you compare Notre Dame to Alabama? Notre Dame can't play in the playoffs. Notre Dame can't do. I wasn't saying Notre Dame's the top team in the nation. I wasn't saying that. But what my suggestion is that saying that their loss to Cincinnati on the road in Cincinnati is a worse loss than to an unranked team. That's the bias.
The way that they're saying it to you, like, how can you compare the two, is literally how the NCAA is doing it internally. Well, we can't compare Notre Dame, what's going on right now, to Alabama. Yeah. So, there's the difference right there, which is actually crazy with how much Notre Dame gets a following still, even though they're a half-ass suck team half the time. So you're going to have to meet me after that one.
It's gonna be interesting for me to see how Alabama competes in the next 5 to 6 years now that everybody else also gets to play their athletes.